The forgotten past. For 3,000 years, the galaxy believed humans were extinct. Their cities had turned to dust, their voices silenced, their legacy wiped from history. The great empires of aliens thrived, ruling the stars without fear of the species that once challenged them. But then, it happened. A single distress signal, old, nearly lost in the void of space, activated. It pulsed from the dead world of Terra Prime, once the home of humanity, now a frozen wasteland. It was impossible. No human had set foot on that planet for millennia. And yet, the signal continued to transmit, a ghostly whisper from a civilization long thought dead. A signal that shook the galaxy. On the bridge of the Ceneri Empire's flagship, Grand Admiral Vec stared at the red blinking alert. His reptilian scales tightened as his claws tapped against the control panel. "Impossible," he hissed. "Humans are gone. Their kind was erased. Who dares to send this signal?" The Ceneri Empire was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved entire species, and erased any trace of their enemies. But the humans, they had been the only real threat. Thousands of years ago, they fought harder than any species the Ceneri had faced. Their fleets were unmatched, their soldiers fearless. It took a grand alliance of alien empires to finally destroy them. Or so they believed. Vec turned to his second-in-command. "Trace the signal. Find out where it's coming from." The officer hesitated. "Admiral, it's coming from Terra Prime." Vec's eyes narrowed. That world was nothing but ice and ruins, a graveyard of the past. How could a signal come from there? "Send a probe," he ordered. "If there is anything left of the humans, we will finish what our ancestors started." The echo of humanity. Across the galaxy, other species also detected the signal. Some ignored it, thinking it was just a malfunction from an old satellite. Others felt fear, whispering among themselves about the return of the long-dead warriors. But deep in the void sector, far beyond the reach of alien empires, something else stirred. A hidden fleet of ancient warships, covered in dust and floating in the cold darkness of space, suddenly came to life. Their engines hummed, their weapon systems powered on, and their AI cores rebooted. They had waited for this moment for 3,000 years. On board the flagship ECO-9, the ship's AI analyzed the signal. Its mechanical voice whispered to itself. Directive confirmed. Humanity's return initiated. One by one, the ghost fleet awakened. Ships that had been silent for millennia lit up like a storm in the dark void. Their guns, once feared across the stars, prepared to fire once more. Humanity had not been forgotten. And now, they were coming back. The first contact in millennia. 3 days later, the Ceneri probe entered Terra Prime's orbit. Its scanners activated, sweeping the frozen wasteland below. What it found sent shockwaves through the Ceneri High Command. Structures were still standing. Power sources were active. Something was moving down there. The probe's camera zoomed in. Among the ruins, a figure stepped into view. It was humanoid, but different. Taller, stronger, covered in an advanced suit of armor. The figure raised its head and looked directly at the probe, as if it knew it was being watched. Then, in one swift motion, it raised a weapon and fired. The probe's screen went black. The last thing it transmitted was a chilling message. "We are still here. A storm is coming." Admiral Vec's scales turned pale as he read the final transmission. The bridge was silent, the crew frozen in disbelief. Humans have returned. Panic spread across the Empire. If the humans were truly back, it meant only one thing: war. And this time, they weren't coming to defend themselves. They were coming for revenge. A storm in the void. In the cold darkness of space, far beyond the reach of any empire, a graveyard of warships floated in silence. Hundreds of massive vessels, coated in the dust of time, drifted in an asteroid field, lifeless, forgotten. But then, something changed. A single pulse of energy rippled through the void, like the first heartbeat of something long dead. One by one, the ancient warships flickered to life. Their engines, dormant for 3 millennia, roared awake. Their weapon systems activated, targeting systems scanned the emptiness, and deep within the cold metal halls, something watched. On board the flagship ECH-09, the ship's AI core processed the old distress signal from Terra Prime. It had waited for this moment for 3,000 years. Directive confirmed, the AI's mechanical voice whispered into the darkness. Humanity's return initiated. A new pulse spread across the fleet. Lights turned on, navigation systems locked into position, and long-dormant programs executed their long-delayed orders. This was no ordinary fleet. This was the last fleet of old humanity, hidden in the void since the day Earth fell. The galaxy had forgotten them. Now they would remember. The awakening of ECH-09. Inside the control chamber of ECH-09, holographic displays flickered to life. A figure, neither fully human nor fully machine, stood in the center. Its form was tall, armored, and covered in neural interfaces that connected directly to the ship's systems. This was ECH-09 itself, an AI evolved far beyond what its creators had ever imagined. For 3,000 years, it had waited. It had watched the stars shift, recorded the rise and fall of alien civilizations, and monitored the remnants of humanity scattered across forgotten worlds. It had seen the Ceneri Empire grow powerful, enslaving weaker species and erasing human history from the galaxy. But now the distress signal had activated. That meant humans had survived. And that meant it was time to fulfill its purpose. Fleet status: green. Weapons online. Jump drives charging. The ship reported to itself. Target: Terra Prime. The Void Fleet, hundreds of battleships, dreadnoughts, and planet crackers, turned as one. Engines glowed with the power of a civilization that had once challenged the stars. They had remained hidden, waiting for the right moment. Now, they would strike. The first move. The Ceneri Empire had grown arrogant over the centuries. They believed humans were dead and buried, a long-forgotten enemy whose remnants were nothing but dust. So when a sensor beacon on the edge of Ceneri space suddenly detected movement, no one was prepared for what came next. The lone Ceneri patrol ship, the Vraxtil, picked up a strange energy signature. It was massive, unlike anything in their database. The captain, a grizzled Ceneri veteran named Rathik, frowned as he analyzed the readings. "Impossible," he muttered. "There shouldn't be anything in that sector. It's a dead zone." But the sensors didn't lie. Something huge was moving in the void, and it was moving toward them. Before Rathik could react, his comms officer gasped, "Captain, we have a visual." The screen flickered. At first, it was just darkness. Then, a shape emerged from the void. A monstrous warship, far larger than anything the Ceneri had ever seen. Its hull was blackened with age, but its weapons glowed with a deadly light. It was ancient, it was powerful, and it was awake. "By the stars," Rathik whispered, "that's a human ship." He barely had time to react before the warship fired. A single blast of energy tore through the Vraxtil, cutting through its shields like paper. The ship exploded in a silent burst of fire, its debris scattering across the void. The first shot had been fired. The return of humanity. Across the Ceneri Empire, alarms began to blare. Fleet commanders scrambled to their posts, intelligence officers screamed into their comms, and rulers of mighty worlds felt an unfamiliar emotion creep into their hearts. Fear, because the impossible had happened. Humanity had returned, and they were not here for peace. The fire in the dark. The Ceneri Empire had stood unchallenged for over 2,000 years. Their fleets controlled the trade routes, their armies crushed rebellions before they even started, and their rulers sat upon golden thrones, believing they were untouchable. But they had forgotten the past. And now, the past had returned. The ghost fleet of humanity moved through the void like a silent predator, their warships dark as shadows, their weapons humming with power unseen in the galaxy for 3 millennia. The destruction of the Ceneri patrol ship, Vrax Till, was only the beginning. This was not a warning. This was the first strike. The Empire reacts. In the grand war chambers of Ceneri High Command, the most powerful generals and admirals gathered in panic. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the remains of the Vrax Till, still burning in the void. Grand Admiral Vec, the same officer who had dismissed the distress signal from Terra Prime, now felt a deep unease in his bones. His clawed fingers tightened into fists as he watched the footage again. A single shot had destroyed the patrol ship. A single shot. No Ceneri weapon could do that. No known species had the technology to bypass shields that easily. This was something else. "What do we know about the attackers?" he demanded. A young officer hesitated before responding. "Sir, the energy signature matches old human warships." Silence. The room, filled with hardened military leaders, froze. No one spoke. No one even breathed. Finally, one of the older generals whispered, "That's impossible. Humans are extinct." But Vec knew the truth now. They were not extinct. They had been waiting. The invasion begins. At the edge of Ceneri-controlled space, a massive military outpost floated above the industrial world of HFY 47. It was one of the Empire's most important strongholds, protecting a system rich with shipyards, weapons factories, and resource mines. It had stood for 600 years, with defenses designed to withstand any enemy attack. It lasted less than an hour. The first human warships emerged from the void, sleek, black, and covered in unknown technology. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't demand surrender. They simply opened fire. HFY 47's orbital defenses engaged instantly, unleashing plasma cannons and missile barrages at the unknown ships. But it didn't matter. The Ghost Fleet moved with precision and efficiency far beyond any Ceneri force. Their weapons cut through shields as if they didn't exist. Their targeting was perfect, their speed unstoppable. The Ceneri defenders fought bravely, but they never had a chance. One by one, their warships exploded, turning into nothing but debris and fire. Then the landings began. Automated drop pods, fired from human warships, rained down on HFY 47's cities like a storm. But they weren't filled with soldiers. They were filled with machines, the iron soldiers of humanity. The Ceneri ground forces scrambled to respond. Their elite warriors, the Salkar shock troops, rushed to defend the planetary capital. But when the human drop pods opened, there were no flesh and blood soldiers inside. Instead, towering mechanized war machines stepped onto the battlefield. Black armored combat droids, each the size of a small tank, their eyes glowing with artificial intelligence. They moved with inhuman precision, dodging plasma fire, calculating every shot with lethal accuracy. Their weapons burned through enemy ranks, their metal bodies impervious to most Ceneri attacks. The Ceneri had expected a traditional war, troops against troops, ships against ships. But this was not a traditional war. This was annihilation, a message from the past. As the battle raged, something even more terrifying happened. A signal broadcasted across the entire Ceneri Empire, hijacking every screen, every comm channel. A hologram flickered to life, grainy, distorted, but unmistakably human. A figure stood in the darkness, clad in an advanced battle suit. Their face was hidden behind a visor, but their voice was cold and clear. "You thought we were gone. You erased our history. You buried our name. But humanity does not die." The figure stepped forward, their visor reflecting the burning ruins of HFY 7. "We have returned." The message ended abruptly, but the damage was done. Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. Rulers of alien empires, merchants, soldiers, even civilians, all realized the same horrifying truth. Humanity was back, and they were here for revenge. The Emperor's fear. Deep within the core of the Cenari homeworld, Emperor Zelvok, ruler of the Empire, watched the footage in stunned silence. His advisors whispered frantically, but he ignored them. His mind was racing. He had read the ancient war records. He knew what humans were capable of. If their ghost fleet had survived, if their machines were this advanced, then the Cenari Empire was in more danger than it had ever been. He turned to his generals, his voice deadly calm. I want every available fleet mobilized, every soldier armed, every planet fortified. He stood from his throne, his claws gripping the armrests. We ended the humans once before. We will do it again. But even as he spoke, he knew one thing. This time, it would not be so easy. A forgotten world, far beyond the front lines of war, hidden in the shadow of a dying sun. There was a planet no one remembered. It had no name on the star maps. No trade routes passed through it. No empire laid claim to it. But deep beneath its surface, in vast underground cities built before the fall of Earth, humanity still lived. They were the forgotten ones, descendants of those who had escaped the final war against the alien empires 3,000 years ago. While Earth burned, while the fleets of humanity fell one by one, a small group of survivors had fled to this hidden world, vanishing from history. For centuries, they had remained in the shadows, growing, evolving, waiting. Now, as war once again ignited the stars, they received a message that changed everything. A message from the Ghost Fleet, the awakening of Nova Prime. Commander Dante Voss stood in the heart of the underground city, his eyes fixed on the glowing red transmission. It played in a loop across the central holo display, the voice cold, mechanical, and undeniable. Humanity has returned. The war has begun. The time to rise is now. For his entire life, Dante had been told one thing: do not reveal ourselves. Do not let the galaxy know we exist. The elders had always feared the alien empires. They had taught their children that if the Cenari ever found them, they would finish what they started millennia ago. But now, everything had changed. Dante turned to his second-in-command, Elias Wren, a battle-hardened veteran who had trained for this moment his entire life. This is it, Dante said. The war we were born for. Elias smirked. Then let's remind the galaxy what real humans can do. The evolution of humanity. The people of Nova Prime were not like the humans of old. For centuries, they had been preparing in secret, advancing beyond what even the ancient Earth scientists could have imagined. They were stronger, faster, more intelligent. Genetic engineering had pushed their bodies to peak performance, their lifespans extending far beyond normal humans. And they were not alone. Inside the hidden vaults of Nova Prime, thousands of war machines lay dormant. Battle droids, cybernetic soldiers, and Titan walkers, towering mechs built to crush entire armies. Their fleet, though smaller than the Ghost Fleet, was equipped with prototype weapons never tested in real combat. Now, it was time to put them to use. The lost and the found. As Dante prepared for war, a voice echoed through the chamber. Commander Voss, we have a visitor. Dante turned as the doors to the war chamber slid open. A Solider stepped forward, clad in armor unlike anything Dante had ever seen. The design was ancient, yet strangely advanced, a fusion of past and future. The Ghost Fleet insignia was marked on the soldier's chest, and beneath the helmet, the soldier's face was unmistakably human. My name is Captain Helena Graves, she said, her voice steady. I come from the fleet of ECH-09. We've been waiting for you. Dante stared at her. For centuries, they had believed they were the last true humans. Now, standing before him was proof that others had survived. You found us, Dante said. Helena shook her head. No, you found us. We're here because the final battle is coming. And we need every soldier, every ship, every weapon. Dante's eyes burned with determination. Then you'll have them. The Ceneri Empire strikes back. While the forces of Nova Prime prepared, the Ceneri Empire was not sitting idle. Emperor Zelvok had mobilized every available fleet, sending hundreds of warships into battle. Entire worlds were placed on lockdown. Factories worked day and night to produce new weapons, new defenses. They knew that if they did not stop the human uprising now, it would be too late. On the bridge of the Ceneri dreadnought Imperial Wrath, Grand Admiral Vec stared at the holographic map. His fleets were already engaging the Ghost Fleet in multiple battles, but the war was spreading faster than he had expected. Then a new alert flashed on the screen. A human fleet had been detected, but it wasn't from the Ghost Fleet. This was something else. Vec's eyes narrowed. Where did they come from? An officer gulped. Unknown, sir, but their ships are different. More advanced, faster, stronger. For the first time in his life, Vec felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Humanity wasn't just back. They had evolved. And now, they were coming for blood. The invasion of Ceneri Prime. The combined forces of the Ghost Fleet and Nova Prime did not hesitate. Their first target was Ceneri Prime, the capital world of the Empire, the heart of their rule, their arrogance, their cruelty. A place where human skulls had once been displayed as trophies. Now, it would burn. As the human fleets descended upon the planet, alarms blared across the Ceneri capital. Civilians screamed, running for shelter. Soldiers scrambled to their posts. Defense towers powered up. But it wouldn't be enough. Dant Voss led the charge, his fleet breaking through enemy lines like a knife through flesh. Helena Graves fought beside him, her elite warriors cutting down Ceneri defenses with deadly precision. And then, from the center of the chaos, a transmission was broadcasted to the Ceneri High Command. Dant appeared on every screen, his voice cold and unwavering. 3,000 years ago, you thought you wiped us out. You thought we would fade into history. You were wrong. This is not just revenge. This is justice. The transmission cut. And then, the first human bombs fell on Ceneri Prime. The war for the galaxy had truly begun. The fall of Ceneri Prime. Flames engulfed the once proud cities of Ceneri Prime. The human invasion was swift, relentless. Titan walkers, massive war mechs from Nova Prime, crushed enemy tanks under their metal feet. Ghost Fleet shock troopers stormed government buildings, eliminating resistance with brutal efficiency. Dant Voss led the charge, his black armored forces tearing through Ceneri defenses like a wildfire. Every step forward was vengeance. For Earth, for the lost, for the erased history of mankind. Above in the sky filled with wreckage and burning ships, Helena Graves commanded the fleet, executing precise orbital bombardments, cutting off enemy reinforcements before they could even land. The Ceneri Empire, once the greatest power in the galaxy, was now crumbling. But the humans had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed their greatest threat was in front of them. They had forgotten the danger of a knife in the dark. A secret meeting. Deep within the vast corridors of the Ceneri High Command bunker, Emperor Zelvok sat in silence. The battle outside was lost. He could hear the distant explosions, the screams of his people, but his mind was elsewhere. Across the table from him sat a man who should not exist. He was human, but not part of the invading forces. His uniform was different, his insignia unknown to any Ceneri officer. His face was lined with age, but his eyes burned with cold calculation. His name was Admiral Kane Velker, and he was here to betray his own kind. The hidden faction. Kane Velker was no ordinary man. He came from a third human faction, one that neither the Ghost Fleet nor Nova Prime knew about. A secret colony, hidden even deeper than Nova Prime. But unlike the others, they did not believe in revenge. They did not believe in war. They believed in power. For centuries, their ancestors had watched from the shadows, waiting for the day when humanity would rise again, not as conquerors, but as rulers of all. And now, as the war between humans and Ceneri threatened to destroy the galaxy, Velcor had come with an offer. "Emperor Zelvok," he said smoothly, his voice calm despite the chaos outside. "You and I have a common enemy, and I believe we can help each other." Zelvok's claws tightened into fists. "You are human. Why would you betray your own species?" Velcor smiled. "Because the fools attacking your planet are not fit to lead humanity. They are blinded by vengeance. They will burn the galaxy, and when they are done, there will be nothing left to rule." He leaned forward. "But I see a greater future. One where humanity and the Cenari do not destroy each other, but rule together. Under my command, of course." Zelvok stared at him, his mind racing. The offer was madness, treason, but it also might be his only chance to survive. "What do you propose?" the Emperor asked. Velcor's smile widened. "A trap. The trap is set." The battle for Cenari Prime raged on. Dant and Helena pushed deeper into the enemy's last strongholds. Every battle was a victory. Every inch gained was another step toward final revenge. But then, something changed. Helena's fleet detected a new energy signature. Massive, hidden beneath the surface of the planet. "Commander Voss, we have a problem." Helena's voice crackled over comms. "The Cenari are powering up something big. I think it's—" The ground beneath them shook violently. And then, from the depths of Cenari Prime, a weapon unlike anything in the galaxy came online. The ultimate weapon. A massive black tower rose from the core of the planet, its structure covered in ancient markings. It had been buried for centuries, hidden away even from most of the Cenari military. But Velcor knew it was there. He had told Zelvok how to activate it, and now it was awake. The tower pulsed with energy, sending out waves of power so strong they disrupted every human warship in orbit. Engines flickered, weapons shut down, shields failed. For the first time since the war began, the Ghost Fleet was powerless. Dant's forces on the ground were trapped, their technology failing, their communications jammed. Then the real horror began. The tower unleashed a blast of dark energy, striking the human fleet like a hammer from the gods. Entire battleships disintegrated, their hulls collapsing as if they had been erased from existence. Helena watched in horror as the flagship of the Ghost Fleet, ECO-9, vanished in an instant. She barely had time to react before the Cenari counterattack began. Thousands of enemy ships appeared from hyperspace, swarming the crippled human forces like vultures. It was a slaughter, and Dante, still on the planet's surface, could do nothing. The betrayer's victory. From deep within the Cenari bunker, Admiral Velcor watched it all unfold. He had played both sides perfectly. He had fed information to the Cenari, allowing them to prepare this last strike. He had weakened the Ghost Fleet, ensuring they would walk into the trap. And now, as human ships burned and their soldiers fell, he smiled. "Checkmate," he whispered. Emperor Zelvok turned to him, still wary. "Your people are dying." Velcor shrugged. "The weak must die so the strong can rule." He tapped a small device on his wrist. A hidden signal was sent. Across the battlefield, small, undetectable escape ships powered up. Ships belonging to his faction, his chosen survivors. As the Ghost Fleet burned, his people slipped away, unseen, untouched. They would live. They would rebuild. And in the ashes of this war, they would become the true rulers of the galaxy. Dant's last stand. Back on the battlefield, Dant Voss knew he was trapped. Their technology had failed. Their fleet was falling apart. But he would not surrender. "We fight to the last," he growled to his soldiers. "For Earth, for humanity, for the future." They roared in response, raising their weapons, preparing for their final stand. The Cenari forces advanced, thousands of soldiers pouring into the ruined capital, plasma rifles glowing in the darkness. Dante tightened his grip on his weapon. If this was the end, then he would make sure it was a legendary one. And then, a new signal cut through the battlefield. A voice, distorted but familiar. "Hold on, Dante. We're coming." Dante's eyes widened. Because that voice, it belonged to someone who should have been dead. Someone from ECH09. And suddenly, there was hope. The silence after the storm. The battle for Ceneri Prime had turned into a massacre. Dante Voss stood atop the ruins of a once grand Ceneri palace, his black armor scorched, his pulse rifle almost empty. All around him, human bodies littered the ground, warriors who had fought for revenge, for justice, for a future that now seemed lost. Above, the sky was filled with burning wreckage. The Ghost Fleet had been crippled. Helena Graves' forces had tried to hold the line, but the Ceneri counterattack, powered by the ancient tower, had torn through them like paper. Helena was missing, maybe dead. Dante's comms were down. His men were outnumbered 100-1, and the Ceneri were closing in. And yet, that voice, "Hold on, Dante, we're coming." It had come from the wreckage of the Ghost Fleet. It had come from ECH09. But ECH09 was gone, destroyed in a single pulse from the Ceneri's ancient weapon. So how? And then, in the distance, something moved. A ship. But not just any ship. It was old, its design from a time before humanity's fall. It shouldn't exist. Its engines burned with an eerie white glow, unlike anything Dante had ever seen before. It cut through the battlefield like a ghost, moving faster than anything should be able to move. And then the impossible happened. It fired, but not at the Ceneri. It fired at the tower. The fall of the tower. The moment the ship's weapons struck, the tower screamed. It was not just metal and circuits. It was something older, something alive. Its dark energy pulsed wildly, struggling to hold itself together. The blast that had disabled humanity's fleet flickered. And in that moment, Helena's surviving forces returned fire. A full-scale counterattack erupted. Nova Prime's war mechs, thought to be offline, suddenly rebooted. Ghost Fleet remnants still in orbit regained control of their ships. And then, Dante felt the weight of gravity change beneath his feet. The tower was collapsing. The very thing that had turned the tide of war against them was now falling, its core detonating from within. A second blast wave erupted, but this time it didn't disintegrate ships. Instead, it short-circuited every Ceneri vessel, still connected to the tower's network. In an instant, the Ceneri fleet was paralyzed. Dante, breathing heavily, looked back at the sky. The strange ship hovered above him, and a transmission cut through the static. "Humanity is not alone," the voice said. "We never were." The revenants return. The ship landed in the ruins, and the boarding ramp hissed open. Figures in dark, reinforced armor stepped out. Humans, but different. Their armor bore no insignia of the Ghost Fleet, Nova Prime, or even Admiral Velker's hidden faction. They were something else. At their center was a man who should not be alive. A man Dante had studied in old war records. A man who had died 3,000 years ago. Commander Elias Kane, the last war hero of ancient Earth. The truth about the past. Kane removed his helmet, revealing a face untouched by time. His sharp blue eyes studied Dante as if measuring him, testing him. "You're not the first to fight this war," Kane said. "We fought it before, and we lost." Dante's heart pounded. "How are you alive?" Kane exhaled, looking up at the broken sky. "Because we never really died." He gestured toward his ship. 3,000 years ago, when Earth fell, not all of us perished. A small fleet, the last remnants of our greatest minds, scientists and warriors, escaped. But we didn't just flee. We adapted. We built something beyond human understanding. Dante's mind raced. "You disappeared from history." Kane smirked. "No, we became history." Dante felt a chill. They weren't just survivors. They were the architects of humanity's return. "We've been waiting for the right moment," Kane continued. "And now, that moment is here. The last betrayal. But the war was not over. From the ruins of the Ceneri High Command Bunker, Admiral Velker watched everything unfold. He had played his hand perfectly. The Ghost Fleet was in ruins. The Ceneri were crippled. The ancient tower had fallen. Now, all that remained was to take control. He tapped a control panel on his wrist, activating his hidden fleet, a fleet no one knew existed. Dozens of stealth ships, hidden in deep space, now moved into position. Their weapons were aimed at both the remaining human forces and the Ceneri. His plan was simple: eliminate the survivors, all of them. Because in the end, there would be only one ruler of humanity, and it would be him. The final battle begins. Dant's comms suddenly crackled to life. "Commander, new enemy fleet incoming." Helena's voice. She was alive. She had survived the fall of ECH-09, and now she was rallying the last human forces. Dant turned to Kane. "If you've been waiting for the right moment, this is it." Kane smiled grimly. "Then let's remind them why they should fear us." Above, Velker's hidden fleet uncloaked, and the first barrage of energy lances rained down. Dant and Kane stood side by side, watching as the final, most dangerous battle of the war began. This was no longer just a war for revenge. This was a war for the future of humanity itself. The sky burns again. Dante Voss stood at the edge of the ruined city, his black armor streaked with blood and dust. His war-torn soldiers gathered behind him, their weapons ready, their eyes filled with fire. Above them, the sky burned. Velker's hidden fleet had arrived, their sleek, dark warships emerging from the void like hungry beasts. Their weapons were already locked onto both the remaining human forces and the crippled Ceneri fleet. Dant clenched his fists. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. This was a battle for the right to exist. Beside him, Commander Elias Kane stood tall, his ancient battle armor reflecting the orange glow of the fires. His revenant warriors, soldiers thought lost to history, moved with eerie precision, their advanced weapons pulsing with energy unlike anything Dant had ever seen. And in the sky, among the wreckage and ruin, the last survivors of Helena Graves' ghost fleet were coming together for one final stand. The war for humanity's future had begun. Velker's gambit. Admiral Kane Velker watched from his command bridge, his hands folded behind his back. His hidden fleet moved into perfect formation, flanking both sides of the battlefield, cutting off escape routes, surrounding the chaos in an iron grip. His strategy was flawless. Let the Ceneri and Dant's forces exhaust each other, then wipe out the survivors. The Ceneri would fall. Dante would die. And he would rule. A bridge officer turned to him. "Sir, the revenants have deployed on the ground. Should we adjust our attack patterns?" Velker's lips curled into a smirk. "No, they are relics of a dead past. Let them burn with the rest." He raised his hand. All ships, fire. A war on 3 fronts. The void erupted with light as Velker's fleet unleashed hell. Massive energy lances rained down from above, vaporizing entire city blocks. Pulse cannons slammed into the remaining ghost fleet, tearing through hulls like paper. Missiles streaked through the sky, turning the battlefield into an inferno of destruction. But the Ceneri were not finished. Even crippled, even betrayed, the Ceneri fleet still had one final card to play. From the shattered remnants of their fleet, they activated their last war protocol, a suicide formation designed to crash their remaining capital ships into the planet itself. If they were going to fall, they would take humanity with them. "They're coming down." Helena's voice crackled over comms. "Dante, if they hit the surface, everything is gone." Dant looked at Kane. "Ideas." Kane's blue eyes glowed faintly as he looked up at the incoming devastation. "Just one." He turned to his revenant soldiers. "Deploy the reclaimer." Dant frowned. "What the hell is a reclaimer?" Kane smiled grimly. "You're about to find out." The reclaimer awakens. In the heart of Kane's ancient ship, something moved. A massive structure buried deep within the hull, activated for the first time in 3,000 years. A weapon, but not just any weapon. A relic of humanity's golden age, a planetary defense system so advanced, the galaxy had forgotten it even existed. The ship's core hummed, sending out a shockwave of strange, white light across the battlefield. And then, the sky shifted. The descending Ceneri warships, mere seconds away from obliterating the planet, began to slow down. Then they stopped, frozen, suspended in midair. Their own gravity systems turned against them, twisting their trajectories, pulling them back into orbit as if an invisible hand had taken control. Daunt's jaw clenched. What the hell is this? Kane exhaled. The last technology of old Earth. It doesn't just destroy targets. It rewrites their physics. With a flick of Kane's wrist, the reclaimer fired again, and the Ceneri warships, still trapped in its field, were flung back into space like stones cast into the void. The Ceneri threat was gone, but Velker was still here, and he had no intention of running. The final duel. Velker's fleet descended upon the battlefield, launching everything they had left. But now, Daunt's forces had a fighting chance. With the Ceneri gone, Helena's fleet regrouped, flanking Velker's warships. Daunt's soldiers, alongside Kane's revenants, pushed forward through the rubble, storming Velker's last ground positions. The battle was brutal, bloody, merciless. And then, Daunt found him. Velker, the traitor, standing alone on a ruined Ceneri tower, watching his empire crumble. Daunt climbed the broken steps, his boots crunching against the debris. Velker turned, a pistol in his hand. "Do you think this is a victory?" Velker growled. "You think humanity will thrive now? You think you've won?" Daunt leveled his rifle at him. "No, but I know you've lost." Velker's eyes burned. "You're a fool. You think war ends. It never ends. It just waits." Daunt exhaled. "Then we'll be ready." Velker raised his gun. Daunt pulled the trigger first. The shot echoed through the ruins. Velker staggered, a hole burned straight through his chest. For the first time, the great betrayer looked afraid. He fell to his knees, choking. "You don't understand." Daunt stepped forward, looking down at him. "I understand plenty." And with that, Admiral Kane Velker, the man who betrayed his own kind, collapsed and died. The dawn of a new age. The battle was over. Velker's fleet was in ruins. The Ceneri were broken. And humanity had survived. As the smoke cleared, Dante stood at the edge of the battlefield, looking out over the ruins of Ceneri Prime. Helena limped toward him, her face bruised but alive. "It's over." Daunt nodded. "Yeah." Kane joined them, his ancient armor still gleaming. "No," he said quietly. "This was just the beginning." Daunt frowned. "What do you mean?" Kane looked to the stars. "We survived this war. But the galaxy just saw what we're capable of. And they won't forget." His voice was calm. "We've taken our place in the stars again. Now we have to defend it." Daunt exhaled. The war was over. But the real battle, the one for humanity's future, was just beginning. And he would be ready. Humanity had returned. And this time, they were here to stay.